Chapter 86. Community and Charity. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 19 to 22. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. When thou beatest thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When thou gatherest the grapes of thy vineyard, thou shalt not lean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 19 to 22. We have here another statement on the law of gleaning, because the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Psalm 24, verse 1. God legislates our use of the earth's bounty. In Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 and 10, gleaning is described. The landowner is required to leave the corners of the field unharvested so that the gleaners can have the grain. The vineyard must not be picked clean for the same reason. In our text, this law is expanded. A few dropped sheaf of grain must be let for the gleaners. Fruit trees such as the olive cannot be picked clean. The same is true of things like grapes. The landless poor must be allowed to come into the field and glean. Since the gleaning was of the remains after a harvest, it was harder work to glean than to harvest. At times, as the book of Ruth tells us, the gleaners worked behind the harvesters. Because of this, the owner could tell his crew to leave a little extra behind for the deserving person. According to Ruth chapter 2, verses 15 and 16, and when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. At least until World War I, this practice still existed in Palestine. Some commentators insist on seeing gleaning as related to pagan practices of leaving the last sheaf to the spirits who ruled the fields. This is so remote from gleaning that the idea of relating the two practices seems to be an act of mental and moral dereliction. The reason for so doing is the determined Darwinian perspective. Everything is caused from below and is an act of primitivism, not a mandate from God. In 1 Kings chapter 21, verses 1 to 16, we see how Naboth, in terms of God's law, saw his farm as an inalienable property which he could not sell. It belonged to his forefathers and to the generations yet to come. God's law governs the land and its use, so that the harvest is an aspect of godly charity and community. The protection of the helpless is the duty of all, and gleaning is one aspect of this protection. Goodwill urban gleanings are a modern application of this law. God makes it clear, verses 21 and 22, that charity and justice to the helpless is very important to him. In verses 17 and 18, justice to the aliens, to orphans and to widows is required. In verses 19 to 22, the requirement is charity. God's law links the two together. A mistake made by many commentators is to assume that this law was addressed to wealthy landowners. Nothing in the text limits this law to the prosperous farmer. It is addressed to all. Verses 20 and 21 say that the things specified shall be for or belong to the deserving poor. Because gleaning is very hard work, harder than harvesting, because it is much work for limited returns, the undeserving poor over the centuries have preferred begging to gleaning. Gleaning enabled the gleaners to retain their self-respect. It was not a matter of shame to be a gleaner, but a manifestation of character. Two reasons are stated to motivate obedience to this law. First, verse 19, God will bless the faithful in all the work of their hands, in every area of their life and activity. Second, the fact that they were once in bondage should make them ready to help the helpless. In Clifford's words, they will be blessed in remembering that the land is not theirs by right, but by grace. Its yield is a gift, and gifts are best shared. D. Davies observed of this law, if man is not generous toward his poorer neighbours in time of harvest, he will never be generous. If the profuse generosity of God be lavished upon him in vain, his moral nature must be hard indeed. As men make hay while the sun shines, so should we yield to benevolent impulses while God surrounds us with sunshine of kindness. As we are undeserving recipients, we should share our unpurchased bounty with others. It is a moral obligation to help the weak and the helpless where we can. We are told in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23, the land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me. This tells us, first, that the land belongs to God and cannot be disposed of at our will, because, second, the land belongs to God, and therefore we live on it at His pleasure and on His terms. Third, before God, we are all like the poor and the helpless, transient peoples here on earth. God is the landlord, and His terms for our tenure on earth are unchanging and non-negotiable. The marginal note to this text in the Geneva Bible reads, God judged them, not mindful of His benefit, except they were beneficial to others. The practice of gleaning became an aspect of Christian life. Although a much neglected subject, we have a vivid reminder of it in Millet's famous painting, The Gleaners. To many people of our father's generation, this painting was a vivid reminder of a Christian practice in Europe, America, and elsewhere. Calvin, in a very moving sermon, declared that God declares in this text to men, the land you have is mine, and I have granted it unto you with condition that I shall receive at leastwise the rents and services. God, therefore, in token of a kind of homage, reserveth unto himself the gleaning and other things for the poor that come after to gather the grapes and the olives which are left behind. God saith that these are royalties which belong unto him, and that he giveth and bestoweth them on such as have need, and therefore that the rich men ought not to be grieved therewith, as if they had lost anything, or as if their goods were taken from them. For God saith, all is mine. Yet, see then in effects which is here contained. Now let us note well, that God meaneth not that the poor should be in such wise relieved, as that the rich should be spoiled of that which they possess. For what a confusion and disorder would that breed? We must therefore note that God leaveth unto every man whatsoever he possesseth, either by way of inheritance, or by buying, or by any other just and lawful title. And hereby the poor are warned not to ransack or make havoc of whatsoever cometh in their way, as many do, which think they may snatch away anything by good right, so they be not punished by law. nor have any to witness against them. A marked characteristic of the ancient city, and of cities up to the military use of gunpowder, was the city wall, to protect the city from enemies and marauders. Walls are protective devices. What we are now seeing is the walled individual. A lawless society is making self-protection necessary. Houses are in various ways safeguarded with guns, security systems, and dogs. We're instructed on how to drive an automobile in dangerous areas. The reason for this is both the rise of crime and the breakdown of community. Biblical law requires godly instruction on all levels of society so that the peoples may be trained in the ways of justice. At the same time, it requires a concern for the helpless in society. Douglas Murray has reminded me that the California Hollanders farming in the San Joaquin Valley have long been strong advocates of gleaning. They were reported for this a few years back and were consequently severely penalized by insurance companies. With mechanization, gleaning became easy and profitable. A mechanized cotton picker leaves more than half the cotton in the field. At the end of the tomato season, the mechanized harvesting is similarly inefficient. However, a large-scale farmer would see his insurance costs more than double if he permitted gleaning. Because even trespassers who injure themselves while attempting to rob a farm collect large sums from the owner, insurance costs in this, the dark age of our history, are heavily penalized for their Christian charity. In the modern world, and too often the church, charity is left to the state and to human impulse. God's law is forgotten. But man's impulses are sinful, not godly. To have a just society, we must be charitable as God requires it. There have been, throughout history, not too many eras of grace and peace. All the same, men have lived in and survived very trying and evil times when the grace of charity has been present. It is a witness to community. A community without charity is quickly dead.